Everyone's focused on price, and I understand, but what's happening in the underbelly of the market is way more interesting to me. So that's what I want to focus on right now. Sure, price has been going in the way that it's going, and we get a lot of excitement when price goes up. The bulls get excited, and when the price goes down, the bears come out, and they can have the doom and gloom boomers come out, and they can have their moment of fame while the price is going down. What I want to talk about is really what's going on in the underbelly of the market here, because nothing that I've been talking about has changed. We have an ETF product. We have a vehicle for people to access the market that could not access the market. We have seen a period right now where Bitcoin has run up 200% in a year, and now it's taking a breather. And in that breathing process, we've got FTX being forced to liquidate its estate. We're seeing people that have been sitting in GBTC for so long who have decided, hey, I've made a lot of money. I'm going to take some money out and enjoy my life or whatever I'm going to do. And they've been dumping onto the market as the price is coming down. The key thing to understand here is that despite all of this selling, overall across all 9 ETFs, there's still been a net inflow. So what that tells you is that what you're seeing is steady algorithmic buying crashing into heavy emotional forced selling. So in that scenario, you're going to have a price dip because the algorithmic buying that billionaires, BlackRock, Fidelity, Coinbase, etc., are going to be executing is not going to respond by all of a sudden becoming as emotional as the selling. The selling is emotional, the selling has flooded the market, but this algorithmic steady buying that's been going on is extremely powerful and forceful, and people are not really talking about this because everyone's distracted by price. So what I think is happening here is what I've been talking about for a few months, which is this new buyer, this rotation of the buyer that's happening, as happens with every asset class once it goes through its maturity phase and goes through its securitization phase. Right now you had owners of GBTC, you had speculators, you had people who were doing the short-term arbitrage trade where you could buy a bunch of GBTC or buy a bunch of Bitcoin, dump it into GBTC, wait 6 months for the unlock, and then sell the shares into the market for the premium, which is what was going on back in the day. You had a lot of those people. You had a lot of people who were sitting on it because they got forced into the trade because they bought it. It started going into a discount. They had to hold it. You had all these people that have finally come into some money and they're dumping into the market, and then FTX and all this other stuff. So, but that doesn't take away from the fact that BlackRock's buyers, Fidelity's buyers, are now looking at this going, wait a second, so the market's dipped, but we've got an ETF approved. We've got 4 out of 5 Wall Street behemoths coming in and ready to market this thing to their clients. This thing has immediately gained all credibility when just 4 weeks ago there was people talking about it being used for criminal reasons, etc., etc. Now it's a US listed ETF, and every other country in the world is trying to compete with it. Hong Kong announced that they want their own ETF. South Korea announced they want their own ETF. Everyone's following the guidance of the SEC. And so if I was sitting there as a brand new multi-billion-dollar buyer, I'd be salivating at this point, because not only has the market come down after a big run-up, you got the big boys in the game. You got the SEC basically saying this is a world-class asset at this point, and that's it. We're ready to go here. So do not get distracted by price here. This is the underbelly of this who's owning Bitcoin is completely shifting here, and they keep on gobbling up hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin a day. By the way, if we didn't have the selling, if we didn't have the emotional selling that's going on, you would see the forceful nature of that hundreds of millions of dollars worth of buying, because Bitcoin has never seen that, right? Everyone seems to think that Bitcoin has always seen $100 million a day worth of purchasing. It's never happened. And net, you're looking at about $120 million worth of net purchasing. If the selling wasn't happening, you're looking at a 3x in price. So it's not about the price at this point. What I'm trying to get through to you is that the buyer is changing, because BlackRock's buyer, Fidelity's buyer, is not FTX. They're not emotional arb traders. These people, because again, all of those opportunities have gone away, right? Because the market makers will be doing everything they can to keep the spreads extremely low, because that's their job. So now that this has turned into a world-class securitized asset approved by the SEC, the type of buyer that's coming in is changing, and we're getting $100 to $150 million a day worth of consistent buying that's never going to stop. Sure, right now you have seen all of this selling into the market, but I want to highlight there's still $1.2 billion worth of net buying going on. But just because we've seen this algorithmic buying crash into emotional forced selling does not mean that this steady algorithmic buying is not happening. That's happening every single day. All you got to do is look at the numbers that James and Eric are putting out from Bloomberg, and you can see that this buyer is still there, still forcefully acquiring $100 to $150 million of Bitcoin net a day. Think about it. This is if this was 2 years ago, and we told everyone, hey, Bitcoin's going to have $150 million a day worth of net purchasing going, net long purchasing going on, and it wasn't going to slow down. It was, if anything, it was going to go up. People would have said, nah, you're crazy, because it was probably like $20 to $30 million that was doing that was steadily buying and selling into the market. So now we've seen a 4x on that, and people are basically saying it's over. It's a bunch of stupidity. If you are long-term focused at this point, you need to realize one thing: the buyer is changing. The buyer here is completely and utterly changing, and this new buyer is not the type of buyer that's going to sit there and go, oh, look what happened in the news, sell. Oh, look, maybe I can do this opportunity, sell. They might rebalance, right? They might rebalance a portfolio, but this is not the type of emotional trading or highly speculative or someone that's doing a bunch of illegal shit like what FTX was doing, right? So the focus on that, focus on the underlying buyer changing, because at some point that emotional forced selling is going to stop. But the algorithmic buying, the steady algorithmic $100 to $150 million a day, is just going to continue and continue and continue. So understand that the buyer is changing, and if you're sitting there going, hey, what do I do here? The market keeps going down. Maybe I'll sell some GBTC. You know how many people have messaged me saying, I've sold some GBTC and I just bought back into the Fidelity Bitcoin fund at 10% less, and I had a good trade. That confirmation bias of that good trade is going to start kicking in at some point. And when that kicks in, that's when they're going to get kicked in the bollocks, because that is how the market works. It is going to make you think you're doing exactly the right thing, and then one day you're going to wake up and the price is going to start running from you. Why? Because that emotional forced selling stopped, but the consistent, steady, stable, algorithmic buying just continues on a daily basis. Remember that. The emotional side is always going to stop at some point, but the steady buying, that's going to continue, because they are looking for allocations, right? They're looking for allocations. They're looking for place. They're looking for Bitcoin to put it into their portfolio. And again, this type of buyer is never, ever going to sell. It's not like they're waiting for an opportunity. They're waiting for an ARB. They're waiting for this. They're waiting for, you know, they're never going to sell, and they never need to sell. So I don't even think we've got into speculative capital range right now on BlackRock. I think this is people trying to acquire a position slowly and steadily and waiting to see what the market happens. I wish I could be a conversation between a BlackRock advisor and a multi-billion-dollar purchaser, because I bet the conversation right now is, hey, we're behind it, the SEC is behind it, prices run up 200%, it's now dipped 20%. Now's your entry point, and start sucking up all this Bitcoin into the black hole that will never, ever, never, ever be opened again. And that's the part that people are missing. This new buyer will never sell their Bitcoin, while everyone else is sitting here going, hey, maybe they want to trade. I don't think they want to trade. I think they want to buy it, they want to hold it, they want to shut the fuck up, and they want to keep getting fabulously wealthy, because they're already fabulously wealthy. So right now, if you're sitting there going, oh my God, I'm so glad I didn't get into Bitcoin, take your chance right now, because you've got an opportunity at this point to buy a sell the news event here, and sell the news events don't last for too long. Yeah, there's gonna be a bunch of selling going on, but this ain't gonna be the type of event where this stays down for a period of 3 years, because the buying is, if the buying wasn't happening, I'd be like, okay, cool, you know, that makes sense. but there's a net $1.2 billion worth of buying in the first 7 trading sessions. Like, this is not, you know, this is not some type of, you know, basically what I'm saying is this is not a fire sale where you've got no buyers on the other side. There is $1.2 billion of net purchasing going on. The GBTC bullshit is going to stop at some point, and at that point, the selling pressure stops, but the steady, consistent, algorithmic buying continues forever. And that's really your competition. So if you're looking at this going, who am I fighting against here? The steady, algorithmic, consistent buying is the competition that you should be worried about, because that is the buyer that's going to keep you away from your one Bitcoin. But ultimately, despite whether you are emotional today, despite whether you're panicking about price, despite whether you believe the algorithmic buying going on, even though we can see it in the numbers, despite whether you think Bitcoin is going to die, it doesn't fucking matter. Because ultimately, there are always only 3 rules to Bitcoin. Step number 1, you buy Bitcoin. Step number 2, shut the fuck up. And step number 3, you get fabulously wealthy.